connection between Hunter Biden and Burisma and our involvement in this war?
Well, look, I think it is a hard fact that a Ukrainian-affiliated company, a Ukraine state-affiliated company, made a $5 million payment to the son of a sitting vice president, who's now the president of the United States, who is now sending $200 billion of aid to a country without ever identifying what the clear national objective is that we're advancing by sending that money. Everything I just told you is fact. Now, it is also further my perspective that this war does not advance American interests. We are further driving Russia into China's hands. We are increasing the risk of nuclear war. And we're depleting capabilities that we may better use in other circumstances. So I think that was the payment to Hunter Biden corrupt? Absolutely it was. Do I think that it has some relationship to our posture towards Ukraine? I think it's likely that it does. And does this affect the way Vladimir Putin may look at the relationship between the U.S. and Ukraine? I think that's a legitimate question to ask too, because if you're in Putin's shoes, you're saying, wait a minute, here's a country that's paying bribes to the son of the person who's now the U.S. president that's now arming my enemy to the teeth. So yes, I do think that Hunter Biden has become a geopolitical disaster. Already, his situation with Burisma in Ukraine was the basis for the second impeachment of the last president. And so this guy is a whirling dervish of a disaster in Washington, D.C. There's not some fringe issue anymore that's just a partisan politics tussle. It's having a direct impact on real geopolitical realities in the world, and I think it's a problem, and we've got to get to the bottom of it. That's what I say. Last question, Kendall.
Thank you. Going back to Nashville, you said that being transgender is a mental health disorder. While gender dysphoria is a BSD-5, being trans is not. So, do you believe that transgender people pose a danger to the public? Is that something you're really concerned about? And also, why are you centering the shooter's transness in your call for the police to bring it?
So it's because it's my belief that that has something to do with the unwillingness to release the manifesto. So we have to acknowledge that the normal thing to do, following standard police protocols, would have been to release that manifesto within 48 hours. I think the political circumstances, which includes the transgender identity of that individual, do play in based on the facts we have. I'm open-minded if we learn something different. But on the facts we have, I think that is likely playing a role in their suppressing that manifesto. Now, my general view is we live in a free country. You're free to dress how you want, marry who you want, if you want, as an adult. I think kids are not the same as adults. And I think that when this spills over and has an effect on children in any way, that's really where I have a major problem with. So that's the distinction that I draw, is that kids aren't the same as adults. And so when a kid says that I want to go through a gender transition surgery or chemical intervention or whatever, I say no. Because that kid, and I've met several of them, who later in life regret the decisions that they made earlier. That's wrong. I think we will look back 50 years from now and deeply regret that we allowed that to happen in this country. That's different from being an adult and choosing to live your life in the way you want to live it, as long as you're not hurting other people in return. That's a separate point from the point that I made in Nashville, or at least hoped to effectively make in Nashville, which is that we do have a mental health epidemic in this country that I think is at the root cause of a wave of violent crime. And I think we need to have an honest conversation about reviving psychiatric institutions in this country. There's a direct inverse correlation between the closure of psychiatric institutions in this country and the rise in violent crime. And I think that is a legitimate conversation that we are overdue to have in this country. Thanks, appreciate that.
Can I piggyback off of that?
Very last, very
okay. You addressed marrying who you, Matt Montfort once again, New American. You addressed marrying who you want. I believe I speak on behalf of a lot of evangelical Christians in America, going back to our heritage that you had mentioned. After Roe v. Wade, Clarence Thomas brought up Obergefell v. Hodges needs to be reversed. And just 10 years ago, roughly, even Barack Obama was hesitant to say that homosexuality should be codified. So
I think the federal government should stay out of this.
Okay.
That's the legal question that Clarence Thomas was raising. I absolutely believe the federal government should stay out of this. I absolutely believe in being a staunch, hardline defender of religious liberty, which I've talked about this extensively elsewhere if you've been following the campaign. Hardline in making sure that no religious individual should have to be able to participate, either through a business or otherwise, in a wedding that they do not believe matches their values. And yet, that is happening in this country today. It's actually what one of the more recent Supreme Court cases was about even having to make a website or design placards for a wedding. And I think that was, the Supreme Court ruled on the correct side of that. So I draw a distinction between religious liberty versus individual choice. I also draw a distinction between the role of the federal government. I'm a 10th Amendment absolutist, and I believe the federal government should have nothing to do with it. That's where I stand.